Separating the facts from the fiction and the Baba Mises from the bottom line. Hi, and welcome to the Sunday Schmooze with the Rabbi and the Rebbetzin. I'm Rabbi David Vigler of Chabad Palm Beach Gardens. My wife, Rebbetzin Chana, is my co-founder and co-host here on the Sunday Schmooze.
Hello, and so good to be here with all of you today. I wanted to share with you a very special story, something that I think is meaningful and relevant to every single person. When I heard this story, it really got me thinking. It really got me thinking about so much that I have in my life. And I thought it would be appropriate to share with you, although it did happen quite a while ago in our history, but still, nevertheless, relevant and appropriate. The story goes of, it was right around the time of Sukkot. That is the festival where we sit in the little wooden huts outside. And one of the mitzvahs that we are...
It's ironic. It's like coronavirus when you got to move outside, right?
Well, the opposite, right? We have to move inside. Corona, we move inside. And Sukkot, we move outside, right?
Yeah, but out of the synagogue, I guess. Okay, whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
But one of the mitzvahs that we have, one of the special mitzvahs during this time, is that we actually make a blessing on the 4 species. We have the lulav, which is the palm. And the hadassim, and the arabas,
the myrtle,
the willow,
and the citron.
And
four biblical fruits.
The etrog, which is the citron. Now, the citron is generally grown in Israel. It needs to be very particular. It's a specific kind. It needs to be watched. This is not so easy to get a hold of it. They're generally grown either in Israel or in the south of Italy. There are some really big orchards there that grow them.
Orchards that date back to the time when God commanded Moses to use the species of fruit for the festival of Sukkot, and Moses was a little confused. The Torah says that God sent angels to Calabria of Italia, which is in the boot, I think, right, of Italy?
It's in the south of Italy.
And they brought specimens of the etrog back from Calabria to show Moses what a citron looks like. It's a cousin of a lemon and a lime and an orange. And that's why, till this very day, when you buy the etrog that comes from Calabria, it's got a special premium to the price.
Yeah, so today it's actually not so difficult to get the citron because we have airplanes, and
I hope coronavirus won't be a problem this year for that.
This is true. But still, we're living in a time where it's so, it's not so difficult to get things from one country to another. And we don't really even think twice about how to obtain this fruit. But in the 18th century, it was a little bit more complicated, and it was a little bit more difficult to obtain the citron, and hence, to fulfill this mitzvah. And one year in the town of Berditchev, they were in a real quandary. They did not know what they were going to do because they were unable to get an estrog. Now, what people used to do then, today we each have one. We have one for our home. We have one for the shul. We have one for the children. Then it was so hard to get it that they would get...
There must have been a war or a famine
They
going
would
on.
get one for the entire town. In those days, there was always something like that going on. Life was just not easy. I don't know. I often wonder, like, if I lived in one of those times. I don't know. Life was just so tough back then. We literally can't even relate to it. But they actually had one etrog, one lulav, and the entire town would share in these species. And they were very expensive. And I imagine the entire town chipped in together so that they all had it. And all the hundreds of people would come to the synagogue, would come to the shul, and use the 4 species. And this way they were all able to make the bracha and fulfill this mitzvah. So this one particular year in the town of Berditchev, they were really, really in a bind. They did not know what they were going to do because they could not get a hold of an etrog. They could not get a hold of the citron. And they were beside themselves. They just...
Now, Sukkot without an etrog is like Pesach without matzah. It's like a soldier without a rifle. It's like I don't know, like a doctor without a stethoscope, right? It's just unthinkable. You can't miss out on the etrog on Sukkot, right?
So they were pretty distraught about this. They were understandably really, really distraught that they did not know what they were going to do. And all of a sudden, a couple of days before the holiday, this merchant is passing by the town. He was already on the road for quite a while, and he is heading home, and he happens to have an etrog. And the entire town is pleading with him to please stay for the holidays, stay a few more days so that we can share the etrog with you, so that we can get to fulfill this mitzvah. And try as they might, he was not hearing of it. He said, I've already been on the road for a few weeks. I would like to be with my family for the holiday, and I am going to head back home. And they were really brokenhearted. They were devastated, and they just kept on pleading with him, please, if there's anything, what can we do to convince you to stay? And they just couldn't, until finally the saintly Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Rebbetzin, the rabbi of that town, came to this man and started to plead with him personally and saying, please, hundreds of people in this town will be able to fulfill this mitzvah if you stay. Will you please stay so that we have your etrog? And so finally this man says, you know what? I'll stay, but on this condition. I will stay on the condition that you sign a document that assures me of a portion in the world to come.
Well, so didn't he ask that of the rabbi? Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Rebbetzin?
This is what we just said.
Gotcha. Okay, fine. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll just... All right, go ahead.
I hope my listeners are listening better than you are.
Yeah. I was thinking about something else. Sorry.
Uh-oh. I hope I'm keeping your concentration
Caught
here.
red-handed. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I got it.
So he said to Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Rebbetzin, I will stay and loan you my etrog to the entire community on the condition that you sign a piece of paper stating that you promise me a portion in the world.
But I think he wanted to share with him. He said that I'm going to share with you your portion in the world.
Not necessarily. He wanted a share.
A share. Okay,
he wanted
fine.
a share. I don't know if it was his share or if it was another share.
He wants an apartment in heaven.
He wants a share in the world to come.
Fine. Fair
and
deal.
So Rabbi Levi Yitzchak agrees, and he says, okay, if that's what it takes, I will sign this piece of paper. And he does. He goes ahead and he signs the document, gives it to the man, and the man stays for the holiday. And the people are just overjoyed. They are so happy that now they have an etrog in town. Now they are going to be able to fulfill this mitzvah. Wonderful! First night of Sukkot comes, and as you know, as the sun sets, everybody gathers into their homes and into the sukkah. Every family is having their meal in the sukkah. And this man, who is a guest in the town, is now looking for hospitality. He doesn't live here. He doesn't have a sukkah. Now he's looking for some place to stay or some place to eat the first night of Sukkot. It's very important to him. As it is a special mitzvah to eat in the sukkah, hence the name Sukkot, the festival of Sukkot, the festival of eating in the sukkah. He is now looking for a sukkah to eat in. But what happens? Each door that he knocks on, they say, sorry, we're not hosting you. And he's really perplexed. What's going on here? Like, what's going on? They're not hosting me. And finally, it turns out that what happened, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak of Rebbetzin, the saintly rabbi of the town, instructed its residents not to allow this man to eat in their sukkah unless he returned that document. Unless he returned the document that he signed, assuring him a share in the world to come, they should not allow him to eat in the sukkah. How about that?
Sounds pretty shady to me.
Right? That's like, hey, wait.
You don't change the deal.
And you waited till now to tell me this, right? Well, that's exactly how this man felt. He was not happy. And he was now in this situation where he needed to decide what's more important to me. Do I prefer to keep the document and be assured the world to come? Or is the mitzvah of Sukkot more important to me? Would I prefer to sit in the sukkah for my first meal of the festival, which is the one? Until finally he decided, I'm going to give back the document. I'm going to give it back, and this will assure me a place at the table in the sukkah. And this is what he does. He gives back the document, and he has a wonderful holiday meal. The next morning, he heads to the rabbi and he says, Rabbi, you outdid me. You outdid me. I mean, I know that I extorted this promise from you that I would have a share in the world to come. But seriously, I didn't expect you to outdo me like this. I didn't expect you to treat me like this. Tell me, why did you do that? Why did you renege? Why did you not allow anybody to host me unless I returned this document? And to this, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak turned to him and he said, I didn't renege, and I didn't take away what you wanted. But imagine, had I not asked you to return the documents, and you would have been assured this share of the world to come, how much would you have appreciated that spot? You would have felt ashamed. You would have felt bad that you got it, like you didn't deserve it. But now that you actually sacrificed in order to get it, now that you actually needed to care about it and you needed to really think about it and you actually put the mitzvah of eating in the sukkah ahead of it, now you'll feel proud of it. Now you'll appreciate it. And now you'll really feel ownership of it. And I think that that's incredibly appropriate and practical to each one of us in our lives. How often do we get things that we don't necessarily appreciate because they just came too easy, right? They just came. We didn't have to work for them. They just happened to us. Our parents gave us a car, right? Or we got the wonderful tennis lessons or the whatever lessons did we actually appreciate them?
Was that first dollar that you earned on your own, that's the one that you really appreciate.
Exactly. That first car that you bought on your own, you appreciated much more than the one your parents got you.
Even though it was much nicer from your parents.
For sure.
You know, Hannah, this is actually the reason why when we recollect the story of the receiving of the Torah of on Mount Sinai, which happened on the festival of Shavuos, which is the upcoming Jewish holiday. It's coming up next week. And as we welcome and prepare ourselves to receive the Torah on Thursday night and Friday night and Saturday, we're going through this experience of this most awesome moment of how God comes down to planet Earth and he gives the Torah to his chosen people. He gives the Ten Commandments, the Torah. This is an awesome moment, such like never happened in the history of the world, not before and not after. This was the greatest revelation, the most awesome moment of all time, where it was such an intense godly revelation that the Torah tells us that they heard the visions. They saw the sounds. It was
Try to
truly...
Picture that. standing at the foot of Mount Sinai. You just came, I mean, I guess 40 years prior.
No, it wasn't 40 years.
49
They
days
just come
prior.
out of
They
Egypt.
just came out.
Yeah.
They were slaves. They were literal slaves out of Egypt.
50 days later,
Standing at the foot of
from the
Sinai.
plague of the firstborn. It was 50 days after the plague of the firstborn that they now standing at the foot of Mount Sinai.
running. Just crossed the Red Sea. I mean,
you couldn't even catch their breath yet, and now God is revealing Himself to them. What does that even feel like? This is like a miracle in the making, and it was just an awesome moment. I think the way you may be able to describe it perhaps is, when you see something that is just awesome, like the Grand Canyon, and you're just overcome with a sense of awe, with a sense of amazing, incredulous feeling. That must have been what it felt like. But here you are, and God reveals the Torah to the people on Mount Sinai, but something very interesting happens. As God reveals Himself on Mount Sinai, just prior to that, this mountain in the middle of the Sinai desert suddenly blooms and blossoms with the most beautiful botanical gardens. That must have been a stunning sight. A botanical garden overnight on the mountain in the middle of the desert. Certainly an appropriate site, an appropriate now location for the receiving of the Torah.
They probably hadn't seen gardens since they left
Egypt. They were living in Egypt. Egypt itself probably didn't have too many gardens. It's a desert in the Sahara. Too. But there they were. Why does God choose to give the Torah in a garden? Perhaps the message here is that a garden is a place that is magnificent. It's calming. It's a place for meditation. It's a place where you want to get married, where you want to spend time with the people that you love, the most beautiful memories that take place in the garden. But to make a garden, you really need to work very, very hard. It takes blood, sweat, and tears. I remember when we first bought our home, and I figured that I wasn't going to be wasting any money on paying landscapers. I could do this. I'm from South Africa. So the first day that I tried to mow the lawn or cut down some weeds or hedges or something, I came out bloody and bruised.
Didn't work out too well.
Bitten by the most ungodly creatures and bites all over my arms. I said, you know what? Whatever they ask for payment, we'll gladly give them. You see, a garden is a place that takes tremendous effort. It takes money, it takes time, it takes thought, it takes planning. For it to be beautiful, it takes a lot of work. But if you want to destroy a garden, if you want it to be ugly, you don't have to do anything at all. Zero effort will allow it to self-destruct. If you just leave it be. The weeds, the parasites, the pests.
They'll take care of it for you.
They'll just take care of it for you. And that's why the Torah was given in an environment which was really a garden. Because the message here is that in order for us to be able to truly appreciate this gift that God is giving us, it's not just enough for us to show up. We've got to actually invest effort, time, blood, sweat, and tears. We've got to really work for it, just like the man in your story, just like the merchant who was traveling through the town of Berdichev.
It's got to mean something to you.
The only way that it can mean something to you is when you're willing to sacrifice for it. That's the only time when you're able to really appreciate what you have and to be able to appreciate the Torah. And it's with this attitude that we approach the receiving of the Torah in just a few days' time. As we celebrate the festival of Shavuos, we have to really ask ourselves, what are we doing to make the Torah precious in our own eyes?
Are we receiving the Torah? Are we accepting it? Are we making it ours?
Is it a gift? Or is it a garden? Is it something that God just gave us? Or is it a garden that we worked hard to create, to deserve, to appreciate, to nurture, and to enjoy?
And it's really cool graffiti that somebody plastered on a wall. Clearly somebody who's not too much of a friend of the Jews posted this huge sign that said, "How odd of God to choose the Jews." And I guess a member of the tribe, as they call it, wrote under it, well, actually, the Jews chose God. And I think that has so much truth to it. And I think that really describes well as to what is happening on Shavuos. On Shavuos, it's not just that we are receiving the Torah. Yes, we were born with this birthright. We were given this birthright of the Torah, but it's not enough. It's not enough to just have it. It's not enough to just put it on a shelf. It's not enough to just kind of know that it's ours. We need to choose it. We need to make it ours. We need to do something about it.
You know, when Isaac, our patriarch, was getting old, he knew that his time was coming near, and he needed to pass the torch on to the next generation. The Torah tells us a magnificent and very enigmatic story of his two sons. Isaac and Rebekah had two sons, Esau, who was a wild man, he was a hunter, and Jacob, who was pure and innocent, a monotheist. And inexplicably, Isaac chooses the wicked Esau to receive these extraordinary blessings. In a very beautiful episode, Rebekah, their mother, wife of Isaac, creates an elaborate disguise and encourages Jacob to sneak his way through, to disguise himself before his blind father Isaac, to deceive his father, and to steal the blessings that were intended for Esau, that they should go to Jacob. And so it was. The story continues that Jacob becomes endowed with those blessings. Esau tries to kill him for it, but eventually they make peace. As Jacob now tries to receive these blessings, he recalls how earlier in life, much earlier in life, Esau, who was really the firstborn, had actually sold his firstborn status to Jacob. One day he had come home from the field, he was hunting, he was very hungry, and he wanted food that Jacob was cooking. So Jacob said, well, what are you going to pay me for the food that I'm going to give you? So Esau says, what do you want? He says, I want the birthright. I want to be considered the firstborn. So Esau says, big deal, you be the firstborn. I couldn't care less. Here it is. He signs a document. He says to Jacob, here, you be the firstborn. And with that, he gets his beans. Esau sells his firstborn status for a bunch of beans, for a bowl of beans. But that wasn't enough to be able to give Jacob later the firstborn blessing. He still had to sneak his way through. It was only 275 years later, when the Jews are already slaves in Egypt, that the Torah tells us, B'ni Bechori Israel, my son, my firstborn Israel. When God testifies that Israel, which is another name of Jacob, Israel is my firstborn, Jacob is the firstborn. Why did it take 275 years before God could endorse the sale? Because you can sell your birthright for beans, but you cannot buy your birthright for beans. It was only when the Jews endured the suffering, the persecution, when they stayed strong to their faith, loyal to the faith of their fathers, to their values, to their commitment. That's when God says, now I see, now I can tell that you really are the firstborn. It wasn't something that you just received for free, for nothing, for a bunch of beans. This is something that you actually really worked for and you earned. And that's why I just want to say one closing comment, Hannah, that the 10 Commandments themselves, they were actually made not out of stone, as many people think. They were made out of sapphire. That must have been so beautiful. Just picture the 10 Commandments, not very large, but made out of pure sapphire.
Massive sapphire.
That must have been absolutely incredible. Yet think of this incredible image that God gives us here. To make sapphire, to make something out of glass, you've got to work so hard. You've got to be a skilled artisan. to be able to create glass. We've been to Venice together. We've been to Murano, where they blow the glass in that most beautiful way. To make sapphire, to create, to shape it is something which takes so much effort.
Yeah.
But what do you have to do if you want to destroy it, if you want to break the 10 Commandments, if you want to break the 2 tablets of sapphire?
And it slipped through your fingers.
You just need to let it go. And that's what Moses did. The message here was so profound, something for us to remember as we approach Shavuos once again this year, in just a few days' time, to remember that the Torah is our birthright to approach. But did we really acquire it? Did we really earn it? In order to earn it, it's got to be like glass. It's got to be something that you toil, that you work for, that you pay for.
Take care of.
Because if you don't take care of it, it's going to slip right through your fingers. It's going to shatter to smithereens, just like the glass of the 10 Commandments. And this, my friends, is our wish to you as we approach Shavuos in just a few days. We encourage you to do 10 for 10. Whilst you might not be able to make it to the synagogue this year because of the pandemic, take 10 minutes on Friday morning to read through the 10 Commandments at 10 a.m. That's 10 for 10 at 10. The 10 Commandments at 10 a.m. for 10 minutes on Friday morning, as Jews around the world will be joining together to experience the receiving of the Torah. Not just the giving of the Torah, but the receiving of the Torah. To read through the 10 Commandments in Hebrew and in English, to understand and to think about them. You can find those printed out for you beautifully at jewishgardens.com/10. That's the number 10 written in numbers. jewishgardens.com/1 and 0 is where you'll find a beautiful printout that we've prepared for you to print out before the Jewish holiday, before candle lighting on Thursday night, to prepare for your Shavuos experience with your family. 10 minutes to study the 10 Commandments at 10 a.m. on Friday morning, making sure that this is not just a cheap gift, but that this is glass, that this is a garden, something that we can truly appreciate and value.
Yes, and I think it's time that we take the bull by the horns. Choose a mitzvah. Choose something that you will make yours. Make it yours. Something that you can relate to, something that's meaningful to you, something that will enhance your life. And in honor of this upcoming Shavuos coming up next week, just take on a mitzvah that you can call your own, something that you can use that will really, really be as a special gift.
Friends, let's make the Torah great again. Let's make Shavuos great again. We've got to go, but we wish you all a happy Yom Tov, Chag Sameach. Over and out.